Right, Jason, I believe we're live now.
Yes, Chair. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Derbyshire Dales Central Area Community Forum tonight. What's today? The 15th, isn't it? My name's Richard Fitzherbert. I'm the councillor for Dovedale and Parwich Ward, down on our western edge of the district, and it's a pleasure to welcome you all tonight. So that's good evening to our councillors who are here, various officers who you'll be introduced to shortly, and the rest of the public. Thank you for attending, ladies and gentlemen. We hope it'll be a very interesting, informative meeting for you, and there is a question and answer session at the end of the talks that we've got. Although the pandemic restrictions have relaxed slightly since we started planning this meeting, the council has made the decision to continue to hold this round of forums online using Zoom and avoid the remaining risks associated with holding in-person meetings. And we also are here really to see if this format makes it easier for people to attend with everybody's busy lives, and make it easier for people to turn online or just turn up for the talks that they are particularly pertinent for them. So we'll run this meeting as an online seminar with just the presenters appearing on screen and everybody else will be present as attendees. During this meeting, we will receive presentations on good news, the proposed 2022-23 spending plans, the Levelling Up Fund for Town Centre redevelopment, which some of you may have read about in the press, and of course climate change, one of our premium targets in this session of the council. At the end of each presentation, you will have the opportunity to ask questions on what you have heard from the officer. If you wish to speak, please use the chat, the raise hand, or the chat function, or just let us know. I will then invite you to speak, and you'll be asked to turn on your microphone, please. Your image will not be displayed, but all participants will be able to hear you. If you wish to ask a question but do not wish to speak, please use the chat or question functionality, and the officers will inform me or read out the question themselves. Towards the end of the forum, we'll have an open question and answer session when all the panelists will be able to hopefully answer your questions. This meeting is being filmed live for subsequent broadcast via the council's website. If you're invited to speak, your image will not be displayed, but your name will be. I hope that's all clear. Thank you very much. And for the first item, I'd like to invite the council's chief executive, Paul Wilson, to provide a summary of the council's key activities in the recent months. Paul, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Despite the fact that we've had 2 years of a global pandemic, an awful lot has been achieved across the communities of the Derbyshire Dales. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes giving you a very quick summary of some of the key activities that we have been undertaking across the whole of the district. Okay, so in terms of our Clean and Green team, as you may be aware, we've been very successful for many years in actually achieving green flag status for our park at Hall Leeds in Matlock. And we're actually delighted to now have secured a green flag award for Bath Gardens in Bakewell. So this is the second in a series of green flags that we want to achieve across all our main parks. And the aim is that we continue to improve the Ashborne Recreation Ground during the next 12 months in order that we can get that to green flag status application for next year. So continuing to provide attractive places for residents and visitors to enjoy their leisure time. This year is a very big year for Her Majesty the Queen as she celebrates the Platinum Jubilee, and the District Council is very keen to support activities across all Derbyshire Dales communities. So we're going to be actually considering an initiative in the next 2 weeks, whereby we're going to be potentially awarding town and parish councils an allowance in order that they can support initiatives within their local communities. So this will be a financial grant. The proposition is that £1,000 would be granted to the main town councils, £500 to parish councils to support any activities that they wish to support across their local community in support of this special occasion. Our sports development team has continued to remain active despite the COVID pandemic. And one of the key initiatives that we undertook was to actually provide some Christmas and January holiday activities and a food programme in some of our areas. And this continues into the February half term, and it will also apply for future funding in successive years. So again, a very important initiative to support some of our local communities. We also organise walking for health programmes, but also other activities to improve the health and well-being. So some of the more recent events have taken place in Ashborne and Matlock, where a series of family-friendly events were organised by the sports development team, which included some fun runs in Bakewell and Wirksworth being planned for March and April. So further details of those are available on the council's website. The economy of the Derbyshire Dales is incredibly important to the District Council. It's one of our key priorities, and we're very proud to have recently launched our Invest in Derbyshire Dales branding initiative. So this is, in effect, a one-stop shop for advice and guidance for existing businesses or potential new businesses who want to access information regarding how we can actually support you as you actually develop business activities within the area. So launched on the 1st of February, the website does give a very comprehensive source of information, including access to some of our more strategic development sites, commercial property searches, grants and loans, and advice on key economic factors which you may wish to take into account. So if you haven't seen that already, please take a look at that website. Monologue Illuminations, we're incredibly proud as a District Council to host this event, and despite the fact that we weren't able to host it in 2020 due to the pandemic, we were able to hold a very successful event in 2021. And despite having to reduce the capacity because of the COVID restrictions, it's been tremendously successful, and an awful lot of visitors came along. Website activity was very significant indeed. And we're going to be taking the lessons learned from that activity and moving that into the planning for the 2022 event. Turning to our car parks, we've recently introduced a pay by phone initiative on our car parks. So this is to assist residents and visitors who may need to pay and display on our car parks, but in order to avoid the need to having to return back to a pay meter to take another ticket, this allows you to update status on your mobile phone. So it's a very common application which is used in many parts of the country now, and already we've had 43,000 transactions since we launched it in October, generating £129,000 of income for the District Council on this new system. So again, introducing better flexibility for all concerned. You're going to be hearing a little bit more later this evening about the District Council's climate change initiatives, and biodiversity is incredibly important to the District Council because clearly we play a role in maintaining verges on behalf of the Highway Authority and other areas of land in District Council control. So for the last couple of years, we've actually been looking at some of those areas, and we're very proud to have trialled a series of initiatives in order to reverse biodiversity loss. In year one, we piloted a number of sites across the district, 2 areas in Hathersage, 2 in Bradwell, 2 in Hartington, 3 in Matlock, 2 in Wirksworth, plus additional sites in Wardlow, Beeley, Cromford and Doveridge. And this initiative is going to continue into 2022 as we strive to meet our climate change objectives. Again, another important initiative supporting community activity is the new Ashborne Pavilion in the park, a £1 million community-led sports and community hub facility, which is going to be opening this month. This is something which has been progressed by the Ashborne Sports and Community Partnership with support from the District Council and also other funding partners. So the District Council is very pleased to have contributed financially towards this project. We've also given assistance in terms of management of the operations throughout the construction of this particular project. So a huge investment in Ashborne, and one which will benefit the community for many years to come. Moving back to Matlock, our Hearst Farm Regeneration project continues to go from strength to strength. We've recently attracted funding from Sports England to progress works on the social club on the Hearst Farm estate. And also we continue to attract grant funding from other sources to actually progress a number of developments on the estate itself. Many of these, again, relate to our climate change objectives, and we've been very successful recently in attracting a grant of over £750,000 to help us move forward with that particular programme. So again, a great work delivering tangible, real improvements to the quality of life of residents on that estate. A number of other projects that we are currently working towards is replacing the shelter in Matlock Bath that was unfortunately damaged by a tree and has had to be removed. And we've got other projects planned in Hawleys Park, including works to the clock tower, and also Ashborne Bandstand is going to be rebuilt. We continue to work with local community groups, and one of the key projects that we've assisted with in the last 12 months is the refurbishment of the Ashborne Memorial Park gates. That was completed prior to the Remembrance Sunday last November, and anybody who saw the photographs of that can't but fail to be impressed by the quality of the work that's been undertaken by all concerned. So again, investment by the District Council to improve local facilities. Again, with a climate change bias, the District Council is very keen to promote refurbishment of properties which are currently inefficient in terms of their energy use. So we've attracted funding through the Green Homes Grant Programme to refurbish 33 homes. Planning application has now been submitted and approved, and these works will take place at Mornington Rise in Matlock, with further schemes progressed in Hogneston and Ashbourne. We've also recently completed works at Harrison Arms House Trust in Matlock, and again, it's working towards the District Council's climate change credentials. So just over £900,000 of grant funding has been secured already to improve the energy efficiency of local homes as we actually work towards that climate change priority. Very pleased to announce that the Matlock Bakewell Road Cinema proposal continues to move forward. Planning permission has now been granted for that. An important application is going to be considered by our policy committee in the next 2 weeks. Affordable housing remains one of the District Council's key priorities, and we've recently approved 37 new affordable homes on the former Dove Garage site in Ashbourne, which will be starting imminently. And one of our housing association partners, Nottingham Community Housing Association, will be delivering the most energy efficient affordable housing scheme ever built in the Derbyshire Dales. We've got a 53-unit scheme on Bakewell Road in Matlock, which is progressing well, and we continue to explore other opportunities across the Derbyshire Dales in order to improve affordable housing provision for all of our residents. And then climate change, I don't want to say too much more about this because my colleague Joe Hill is going to touch on this in much greater detail, but there is going to be an event that we're going to be holding in July this year in Matlock Hawleys Park, whereby we're looking for community to come together to actually celebrate the opportunities that exist in terms of climate change. We're also going to be engaging through the local authorities' energy partnerships. So further publicity will be issued on this event much closer to the time. Then in terms of more routine service delivery, we continue to deliver clean and green services across the District Council. We've also progress the implementation of our CRM system, which basically enables residents to interact with District Council services 24/7. Very pleased to say that that already has handled over 130,000 service requests. So again, it's making it easier for residents to access District Council services out of hours. We continue to provide homelessness and housing advice, which has been particularly important throughout the COVID pandemic. And we are also playing our part in terms of relocating the first Afghan refugees to come to the Derbyshire Dales, which will be in March of this year in Ashbourne and Darley-Dale. Council housing, we continue to progress the development of the council housing programme that members have recently approved. We've also supported communities across the Derbyshire Dales with the COVID Welcome Back funding, supporting the number of projects brought forward by town and parish councils. Funding local community projects, again, is very important. 84 community projects have been supported by members through their local projects fund allocations. And from an economic development perspective, we've also recently concluded works to secure the completion of the Ashborne Airfield Link Road, which provides a significant boost to the local economy, creating much needed homes and jobs. So, Chairman, that is a very quick canter through some of the more significant District Council achievements, and I'm happy to take any questions that anybody may have.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. Are there any questions at the moment, Ross? I can't see any on my particular screen at the moment. Okay, fine. Well, there's one from John Green. John, please. Might take it a second to...
Just quickly, on the parking front, I heard you're introducing some improvements, contactless payments and stuff like that. Is there any way of a motorcyclist proving that they've actually paid for the parking in train yet? Because right now, or the last time I used it, you had to leave the ticket on the motorbike, it gets stolen, somebody else uses it, and if you end up with a ticket, you know, there's no way of proving it. Other councils have, you know, registration number inputs, and you get a receipt with that on it. So, I mean, personally, I think the motorcycle shouldn't be charged at all because we take up so much little space, you know, a tiny corner. But if you are going to charge us, then I think, you know, maybe you should give us a way of avoiding being threatened with a fine.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll pass back to Paul there.
No worries.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Green. Well, as you're very much aware, the District Council's car parking machines don't actually require registration numbers to be inputted. But I think the easiest way for motorcyclists to pay in the future is to use the pay by phone application, which clearly wouldn't require the display of a ticket. But I'll pick up the point with the car parks team in terms of those motorcyclists who do actually want to pay by ticket, in terms of the appropriate way for them to do that. So if you can leave that with us, and I'll make sure that we come back to you via email.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions at the moment? I haven't got any hands raised at the moment. If not, then I think we'll move on to Karen's. Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you very much. We'll see you again shortly. We'll move on to Karen now. This is about the proposed 2022-2023 spending plans from Karen Henriksson, who is the Council's Director of Resources. So just give us a moment while we move to Karen's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm here tonight to give you a presentation about the Council spending proposals for the next financial year, 22-23, and our proposed council tax increase. So the main purpose of today is to seek your views on our spending proposals and, as I say, the council tax increase. The good news is that we're not proposing any cuts in services for 2022-23. So this slide shows where your money will go. Thought you might be interested to see that. So you can see that the majority of the money goes on revenue spending, goes on waste and recycling. You might not be surprised to see that. This slide's, the figures include a reallocation of overheads, but you can see that after that, 32% of our spending is on waste and recycling. For clean and green, which includes parks, keeping the roads free of litter and so on, we spend 20%. The next slide shows how we finance our spending. So for this, you might be surprised to see that almost half of our funding actually comes from the sales fees and charges that we ask customers to pay. The government have reduced our funding in recent years, though they didn't do that for 22-23. But this has meant that over the years, we've had to become less reliant on government grants and more self-sufficient. And that's why we now raise almost half our funding from sales fees and charges. Council tax, which most people think of as the main source of our income, accounts for 38%, with the rest funded by business rates and government grants. This slide shows our capital spending. So the previous slide on spending was for revenue spending, day-to-day expenses. This one reflects capital spending, which is for the purchase or improvement of assets, such as land, buildings or vehicles. Our current capital programme that we're proposing for the next 5 years totals £12.3 million. Most of our capital programme is spent on housing. So I don't know if you can see the slide, but we're proposing to spend £4.7 million over the next 5 years, which is 38% of our capital expenditure. A large proportion of the capital programme is also spent on replacing vehicles, and that accounts for 18% of our proposed spend, £2.2 million. We're also proposing to spend around 10%, £1.3 million on regeneration. So to be able to fund this level of spending, we've had to increase some fees and charges, but we've frozen charges for pay and display car parks. And also we've frozen store market rents, given the situation faced by our stall holders in the pandemic. The current rate, we've increased our fees and charges by between 3.1% and 4.5% in the main, apart from bulky waste charges. And that is a lot less than the current rate of inflation, which is 5.4%. That's predicted to go higher, up to 7% next year. So our proposed fees and charges have been increased by less than current or predicted inflation rates. We are proposing a council tax increase of 1.94% for 22-23. And as I've just mentioned, the current inflation rates are much higher than that. And so you can see that the council's absorbing most of the inflationary increase in our service costs. We can't manage to absorb it all unless we cut spending elsewhere. So we're proposing an increase in council tax of 1.94%. The slide that you now see shows the impact of that on each council tax band. The council's actually got the power to increase council tax by up to £5 without requiring a referendum. But that's £5 for band D property. That would work out at an increase of 2.28%. But you can see we're proposing a 1.94% increase, which works out at £4.25 a year for a band D, or around 8 pence a week. If you live in a band A property, the proposed increase of 1.94% would cost £2.83 for next year, or around 5 pence a week. If you're in a band H property, the increase will work out around 16 pence a week, or £8.50 for the year. I thought you might like to know what we're going to spend the extra council tax on. With a 1.94% increase would raise around £130,000. Our draft budget for 2022-23 includes £150,000 extra on economic development that we hope will bring more prosperity to our communities, benefit the whole community. Beyond 22-23, the financial position's a lot more uncertain and more difficult to forecast. And that's mainly because the government's doing large reviews of council tax, large reviews of grant funding and business rates. And that could significantly impact on the amount that we receive to fund our services. There are other cost pressures, such as addressing climate change, which you'll hear more about shortly. And we're running out of funding for our capital projects. Some of our income streams are volatile, particularly income from recycling, so that's uncertain, as is the future for inflation rates, which causes a problem because our costs escalate more than we can increase our council tax. This slide shows our forecast medium-term financial plan for the next 5 years. The plans that we've developed allow us to set a balanced budget for 22-23. The row at the bottom of the table shows the savings that we need to achieve. So you can see the 0 for 22-23. By law, the council has to set a balanced budget before the start of each financial year. You can see that the table shows that we need to identify savings of around £400,000 from 23-24 onwards. We do have a reserve that could be used to offset this in the short term to buy us time to develop a savings plan, but we were awaiting the outcome of the government funding before we take any measures that would involve service cuts. As the slide says, the position should be clearer this time next year when the government hopes to complete its funding reviews, although they have said that for the last 2 years. And finally, this presentation will be on the council's website along with the others if you wish to see it again. The figures in here are current proposals. Councillors will actually meet on the 3rd of March to consider the proposed increase and whether they wish to approve it or not. If you wish to let us have your views, please email us at finance@derbyshiredales.gov.uk by the 28th of February. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Well, I think we've got a couple of specific questions, and you may want on the Q&A chat about waste. Can you see them, Karen?
No.
Oh, fair enough. Is there anybody else that at the moment who wants to put their hands up out there? Shall I read the first one? In the Q&A it is. Have you got it there?
Sorry, I found it. I was looking at it.
Do you want to read it out and then try and answer it? And if you can't, somebody else does. How about that?
So the first question is, regarding waste and recycling, is food and other recycling being collected again actually being recycled? As this is a third of spending, is reducing waste and messaging priority for the whole council's public contact material? Overconsumption is a major cause of the need for emissions reduction, and less waste is less collections. Due to the budget cost, this is not an issue just for the Climate Office's small budget, but cross-council.
I'm happy to answer that.
Paul, thank you. That's helpful.
In terms of the question, is food and other recycling being collected again actually being recycled? Yes, it is. We did have a period of approximately 4 weeks towards the autumn of 2021, whereby due to the shortage of HGV drivers, we did need to ask residents to commingle waste for a short period of time. But we are now continuing with separate collections on that waste stream, and all recycling is going to be recycled. So that remains the current position.
Okay, thank you very much. And Karen, did you want to read out the second question from the same correspondent, I think?
Yes, so the second question is, are the budget categories all separately available somewhere? Some are conflated, e.g. clean, green and safe, includes some waste expenditure, so waste and recycling is actually higher than a third. I can answer that one. We are planning to put the pie charts that you've seen into the Dales Matters that will be sent out with council tax leaflets. As I said earlier, the pie charts in this presentation include an allocation of overheads. Some people have said that distorts the spending, so I'm planning to leave the overheads as a separate category so that residents can see clearly the direct spending on some services. In terms of some categories being conflated, clean, green and safe includes expenditure on cleaning the streets, litter, maintaining parks, and the safe element is for antisocial behaviour. It doesn't include any expenditure on waste and recycling. That's all included in the waste and recycling category.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see any more questions on my screen at the moment. Thank you very much, Karen. That's great. Thank you very much. But we might have a question for you later on when we wrap up. Okay, thank you very much, Karen. So the next presentation is from our Chief Executive, Paul, again, and this is on our policy for the Levelling Up Fund for Town Centre redevelopment that some of you will have read about in the press, and certainly those of us in Ashborne are fairly aware of. But Paul, could I ask you to take this, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So basically, the next few slides are going to talk through what the District Council's proposals are in order that we can be in a position to submit a bid at round 2 of the government's Levelling Up Fund. So just to recap what the Levelling Up Fund is all about, it is effectively a fund towards capital infrastructure bids. We don't know the precise date when the round 2 will actually open, other than it's going to be sometime in the spring, and bids are going to have to be submitted by government for spring, autumn of this year. There are a number of key criteria that any bid has to satisfy. It needs to be a single scheme or a package of scheme that fit together. Strategically, it can't be a free-for-all of a number of disparate projects. The focus has very much got to be on local infrastructure, which has a visible impact. There are a number of key themes. The most relevant to us is regeneration, including town centres, transport, culture and heritage. And most importantly, it does require a 10% match funding to be in place, contractors lined up and planning permissions secured. So the Levelling Up Fund itself for a district council, that can encompass projects between £5 million and £20 million. So clearly, if we were to submit a bid for a £20 million project, £2 million match funding would have to be provided as part of that bid package. So the intention from Derbyshire Dales' perspective is that we have committed as an authority to submit for round 2, and we're going to be looking at a coherent strategic package of capital schemes to regenerate the Derbyshire Dales market towns. And insofar as developing that bid, we have invited the 4 market towns to submit proposed schemes that they would like us to consider as part of that bid formulation process. In order to stand the best possible chance of success, we have done some work in looking at those bids that were successful in round 1. What that has told us is that almost all of the winning bids were for single town centres, i.e. there was no multi-package bids of 2 to 4 town centres, which clearly is a situation that we face in the Derbyshire Dales. And what we need to be mindful of is that we don't have any weak elements in our bid which would pull down the score of the bid as a whole. So the key success factors that we're looking to develop in formulating our bid is that we do come up with a coherent package of interventions. It can't be just a shopping list of individual projects because that would score poorly against the government's criteria. Deliverability is absolutely key. It's got to be land that's publicly owned, permissions in place, and contractors lined up. And that 10% match funding has also got to be secured in order that we can demonstrate and pass the value for money test. So as a district council, we do have some constraints that we need to overcome in formulating this bid, because we are not a land-rich council. There is a significant lack of council-controlled land which we can put bids forward on. And we also have relatively few shovel-ready projects. So quite a lot of development work is actually required in order to get us into the position of being able to submit a bid. So in terms of the potential projects that we're looking at the moment, there are 2 schemes. The first is in Monologue, which has been termed the Western Gate Well. It's the Bakewell Road Regeneration Scheme, which I covered earlier in my slide presentation. This is a single scheme based on converting the market hall to a cinema with related public realm community room improvements. So therefore, it meets the requirement for a coherent package. It's got a very strong strategic fit. It is a corporate priority of the District Council. The District Council is financially supporting it, and it's on District Council-owned land, so it's deliverable. Planning permission is now in place, match funding is in place, and also we are working towards a full Treasury business case in order to demonstrate that that value for money criteria can be satisfied. A second potential project that we're looking at is in Ashborne. I think it's fair to say that at the moment, whilst this is less advanced than the Monologue scheme, it does have some significant benefits to it. It does comprise a number of multiple schemes, but there's a very good strategic case for that. Various landowners are involved and various states of planning permission exist. So there's a couple of hurdles that we need to overcome. There is some match funding in place, but at the present time, we don't have a Treasury compliant business case at present. So we need to do a little bit more work on that. So whilst we are yet to make the decision as a council as to the precise composition of the levelling up fund bid that we will put forward, what we are very keen to stress is that we will continue to pursue projects which meet the LOVE criteria and timescales, and we need to do that clearly at pace. So there's quite a lot of work that we need to do in this next few weeks and months. As I say, we don't yet know the precise timescale, but we are working towards something being ready in the next 3 to 6 months. Monologue is closer to being bid ready at present than Ashborne is, but the important thing is that the District Council wishes to support both Ashborne and Monologue in its project development work now. Clearly, a lot can happen in 3 to 6 months, and an awful lot of progress can be made in order to get some of those projects which might not yet be ready to a state of readiness, ready for inclusion within the bid. So the process that we are going through is we actually have commissioned some technical assessment work for both sets of proposals. That work will be completed before we make a recommendation to council. And whilst a successful bid cannot be guaranteed for either Monologue or Ashborne, what we will do is continue to progress as part of our wider regeneration work initiatives, those schemes, in order that we can take advantage of future funding opportunities as and when they arise. So whichever project or town doesn't make it into the LOVE bid, we will continue to work with them in order to get ready for the next funding opportunity that comes along. So I have to take any questions on that, Chair.
We do have one, and I'll read it out for you. You'll be able to see it on the screen. It's from Marianne Hooper. Can you explain how all these bids will conform to the climate targets requirements that will come on to a bit more of that later? How many jobs will be created? How will it contribute to reducing carbon emissions? Do you want to take that now?
Well, as a very general response, Chair, clearly all of the projects have different elements to them. But if I could take the Monologue Bakewell Road project as an example, because that is most advanced. In terms of climate change, we have looked at opportunities for climate change measures to be incorporated into that development. Clearly, it's an existing structure which is being adapted, so it does have some constraints. But we are looking to maximise climate change opportunities in all of the schemes that will come forward, because clearly that will also address the government's agenda for climate change to be a consideration as part of the bid and the award process. So it is one of the very important criteria that we will be looking towards. In terms of how many jobs will be created, again, that's difficult to say because we haven't actually finalised the business cases at the present time, but job creation is going to be the key. And we've also got to demonstrate that we're getting a good value return on any public investment that is made by the council. So all of those issues will be considered as part of the individual business cases in due course, but it's a little too soon at the present time to be able to give any exact precise answers on that.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. Are there any other questions? I can't see any on my screen at the moment. Okay, so thank you very much, Paul, for that. That's great, and let's fingers crossed for Matlock and Ashbourne to that degree. Thank you. And our final presentation tonight is I'd like to invite Joe Hill, our climate change project officer to tell us more about the climate change proposals and the progress made by the council with our ambition to be a net zero organisation by 2030. So if we could hand over now to Jo, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to give a brief update on council progress to net zero and an overview of some district-wide climate change initiatives. The first thing to say, as detailed on the slide, is that we were pleased to be able to report emissions reductions in the last financial year from our baseline emissions year of 2019-20. They come with a slight caveat, as we're all only too aware that last year was an unusual year, and although we saw a reduction, we do need to be realistic in respect of what we might see for 2022-23 as we hopefully move out of the pandemic. The council's ambition to be a net zero organisation by 2030 is set out in our Path to Net Zero climate change strategy and action plan, and the pathway is defined as per the slide. So I will just run through a few of those projects in a bit more detail. Firstly, looking at our buildings are undoubtedly a big source of emissions, and we're pleased to be in receipt of a almost £600,000 public sector decarbonisation scheme grant, which will allow us to move forward with our ambitions to improve energy efficiency at our three key sites, the Town Hall, the ABC and the depot, and move to start to decarbonise some of the heating there, which should see significant emissions reductions. Our vehicles accounted for 44% of our emissions in 2019-20, so clearly that's a source of emissions that we need to address. We've now undertaken a fleet analysis with support of Nottingham City Council, and we're working through the operational change, the increase in upfront purchasing costs and the installation of the necessary infrastructure to transition our fleet to electric that will be required. You'll see on the left there the schematic illustrates one of the projects that we're hoping to undertake for the depot this year, where our fleet operates out of. That's the installation of solar PV, which will hopefully reduce the electrical demand as we shift to operating electric vehicles. One of the projects that we need to sort of get an early start with is understanding whether we can use some of our land assets to generate some energy. So looking to inset, as we would call it, our residual emissions from electricity as we shift to electric vehicles and to electric heating, and to provide a local secure supply of energy. So we've identified 5 sites and we've commissioned studies to understand the technical and financial feasibility of those sites for solar PV installations. Our leisure centres, although operated at arm's length by Freedom Leisure on our behalf, are where we have invested significant monies in terms of energy efficiency measures since they were transferred across to Freedom in 2018. One recent project, which is just about to complete at Ashborne, is a £734,000 scheme to again, decarbonise the heating, install a significant solar PV array and building energy management system, and that should reduce emissions there by about 56% a year on completion. Some of the softer things now in terms of how we're shifting work as an organisation in response to the climate emergency. The pandemic has had the benefit, as we all know, and as we find ourselves tonight, working in a more agile way. So the council's invested significantly in laptops, in Zoom accounts and an internet-based telephone system to allow us to all keep in touch and perhaps not make those journeys that we would otherwise have previously made. Carbon literacy training is something that we've kind of gone at full speed as an organisation, and pleased to say, as I sit here today, that we have all directors and majority of our senior officers now carbon literate, and we'll be rolling that out further to our members and to other officers and colleagues in the organisation. In terms of the sort of decisions that we make day to day, we've introduced what we call a climate change impact assessment on all our reports, where members are required to make decisions. So that enables them to easily see the impacts in respect of the climate of the decisions that they make. We're very aware that we have a duty in terms of the money that we spend, in terms of our procurement, and we're currently working on a sustainable purchasing policy. and that will help to support the reduction of our outsource emissions, so we understand where those lie. In terms of land, we are working with Derbyshire Wildlife Trust. We're not a big land holding organisation, as Paul mentioned, but we're working with Derbyshire Wildlife Trust to see where we can add value in terms of natural flood management, tree planting, etc. And Paul outlined some of the great work that we're doing around biodiversity earlier. In terms of district-wide emissions, and that pie chart just kind of illustrates, I suppose, the scale of the challenge we all have as a district, as opposed to just looking at the emissions that are under the direct control of the council. Where we've really sort of started to to move into a phase of action is in respect of emissions from our housing, because that's where we really feel we have the capacity, we have the experience and the influence. And again, Paul touched on this before, but we've been very successful so far in terms of the local authority green home grant funding. We're now moving into phase 3 of that. So as Paul touched on, we're currently improving some homes in Hognaston. Mornington Rise in Matlock will be starting in March, and the new funding that we have just secured, 907,000 or just over. I'm just developing a scheme for those for that money at the minute in terms of the next phase of properties that we'll be tackling. We're also working with our housing associations. So Platform Housing have been successful in getting some money from another funding stream, the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund, and they'll be starting work in April in Ashborne and Brailsford. And just some images there of some of the work that we've undertaken so far. The bottom left are the houses in Hognaston, so that's almost a live photo of the works that are going on there at the moment. In terms of sort of other streams of work, we obviously have our electric vehicle charging points installed in the market towns, and we are exploring the feasibility of installing more electric vehicle charging points. Infrastructure and funding for that is tricky, and it's something that we're working through with the support of the county council to make sure that we have a joined up approach. And then finally, just around community engagement, again, as Paul mentioned, we're keen to work with our communities, sharing key messages and themes. I'll be going out with a fantastic home vehicle that you can see there to Ashborne this Thursday, and then we will be out Bakewell, Matlock and Wirksworth on market days next week, storms allowing, and that's really to try to hopefully engage with our residents in terms of domestic energy efficiency. We are also sort of active on social media, sharing things around webinars. We've got a webinar hopefully coming up soon in terms of retrofit and sort of introducing that as a concept. And I'm constantly meeting with people in the community, with our parish councils, supporting applications for things like the Community Energy Fund, etc. So I would encourage anyone, if there's anything that they wish to engage with us on, to to contact me, and we can have a conversation around that. I'm happy to take any questions.
Right, thank you. I've got no questions, Joe, at the moment at all. But you're engaging a lot with the community. Have you been asked to go to any parish councils recently?
I've had conversations with parish councils. We've offered the Fantastic Homes vehicle to those parish councils. Tideswell is one that's taken that up, and we'll be taking that to Tideswell Wakes, I hope, in June.
Right, there may be something for us to have a conversation out of this. Right, we've got John Green, who's come back again with a question. If you just say where you're from, John, that would be helpful as well, just for our officers. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm in Matlock. Yes, thank you for that. Could you just show me the slide on the charging points distribution in the various areas of Derbyshire again, please? I'll very quickly take a screenshot if that's possible. I do have an interest in this.
Can I also ask Joe, from that point of view, is there an app for charging points as well?
I've got it. Thank you very much.
Yes, there are various maps. Yeah, Zap Map is the one that I've referenced on the screen there, but there are others that are available.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions at the moment? My other question is, are you working with the National Park on this as well?
Yeah, so I have been attending the National Park Working Group, looking at developing their strategy around climate change and trying to obviously align all the aims and objectives of the different districts and boroughs that sort of cross boundaries.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Well, I've got no other questions that I can see at the moment, but maybe some when we come to the end. Thank you very much, Joe, for the time being. That's fascinating. Thank you. We've come a long way in a very short time in order to catch up. Thank you very much, everyone. So I'd now like to hand over to the council's leader, Councillor Garry Purdy from Masson Ward, just to say a few words. Councillor Purdy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for attending. Without doubt, the past 2 years have been most testing for our society, perhaps since the Second World War, with the floods in Matlock occurring in November 2019, with the sad loss of life of Annie Hall, a former High Sheriff, then the start of the lockdown periods due to the COVID pandemic, and to make matters worse, circa 100,000 HGV drivers short in the country, affecting many supply lines such as food and fuel. Serco was not immune to the loss of HGV drivers due to the national shortage or their staff suffering the effects of COVID. Life has not been normal in many areas of life. But I want, therefore, to pay tribute to our hardworking and dedicated staff for all of the achievements as outlined by the Chief Executive earlier. And I know that many of you have gone beyond the normal call of duty and worked evening and weekend hours to get the job done. And this was especially so during the floods and in getting business grants out on time to our businesses in Derbyshire Dales, which helped them sustain the businesses. It has not, though, been without its trials and tribulations, especially the problems we and our residents have suffered regarding the waste collection issues. So on behalf of the District Council, I would like to apologise for the significant disruption that many residents across the Derbyshire Dales have experienced to their waste collection service in recent months. Whilst this situation is unacceptable to all concerned, it is important, though, to have a clear and accurate understanding of the context, and most importantly, the actions taken by the District Council to address the problems that we have encountered. As residents will be aware from national, regional and local media coverage of the acute shortage of HGV drivers currently working in the UK, which has impacted upon every sector of the economy, from supermarkets, home deliveries, catering, hospitality, road haulage, and other sectors that rely upon this resource. This is not an excuse. It is a fact, and Serco are not immune to these impacts. Notwithstanding, the service that our residents have received has been simply unacceptable, and residents are quite right to express their dissatisfaction on Serco's performance, which is shared by elected members and officers. In response to residents' concerns, last October, the Council agreed to commission an independent inquiry into Serco's delivery of the 2020 waste contract. This review has now been concluded, and the report is due to be considered at a meeting of full council on Thursday, 17th of February. A copy of the independent review report is now available on the council's website. In summary, the report concludes that there has been an incomplete delivery of the contract requirements by Serco, and there is a need for significant improvements to take place. Despite the council taking all proportionate and necessary steps to manage the challenges, performance has been acceptable, and on behalf of the council, I sincerely apologise for this. Quite rightly, residents want to know when they can expect service delivery to be fully returned. And in this regard, I give an assurance that officers are working hard with senior Serco representatives to put the necessary arrangements in place as quickly as possible to address the ongoing challenges, some of which, though, are outside the direct control of either the District Council or Serco. At the end of 2019, we received a report from an independent external review body on the workings of the council, and we were adjudged to be an excellent council with strong leadership. It is that one team effort in pulling together that has seen us through these very difficult times, and I know that we will concentrate now on serving our public to the best of our ability. I am hopeful that normal service on the waste contract will be resumed as soon as possible, and we will do everything in our power to engage with the public and deal with that issue. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I've got some, thank you very much, Councillor Purdy. I've got one question that we overlooked about uncollected waste bins from Kate Gard Cook, who put it on the Q&A. The website says that uncollected waste ordering bins are under clean, green and safe. I think that's in the budgeting bits. Is Karen out there? I hope. Are there any other questions as we go through this?
Yeah, I wonder if that's a question that could be answered by Ash or Tim if they're on.
Yep. Who's coming on screen?
Karen's here, Chair.
Right.
Yes. I'm sorry, I've lost the question. Let me just see if I find it again.
It's in the Q&A bit from Kate Gard Cook. The website says uncollected. I think it's in the previous conversation with you. The website says uncollected waste ordering bins are under clean, green and safe.
I'll need to speak to colleagues about that. But the financial information that I've gathered under waste and recycling, I've included all the elements of spend that relate to functions carried out by Serco. So I've included household waste collections, bulky waste collections, trade waste collections, and so on.
Right. Okay. Well, I hope that's answered for Kate. There's no open questions at the moment. Are there any other hands up? I can't see any as I go.
Sure,
around
I've had a written.
Right. Okay. We've got some written ones, haven't we? Yeah.
A written question from Mr. John Green. Perhaps it'd be opportune now, whilst I'm on, to answer that.
Yeah. Thank you.
I don't know if it's the same Mr. John Green that's on screen tonight, but it relates to the burning of peatland on grouse moors. And the answer is that Derbyshire Dales District Council does not own any moorland that is used for grouse shooting and therefore has no direct control over the practice of rotational burning. We note that the Peak District National Park's position on the matter is to support recent legislation that prevents burning on protected blanket bogs, except in exceptional circumstances, and to work with moorland owners and managers about alternative methods of management in other areas where this protection does not apply. We would be happy to join with the Peak Park in these conversations. That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Okay. I think John Green made the point of, according to Who Owns England, Moscow Moor north of Bamford is owned by the Duke of Rutland. I think that's up by Moscow Lodge, which some of that area may be within the Derbyshire Dales. So I think we can get back to you. Have you got another question, Mr. Green? I've lost you. Have you got your hand up?
Chair, that's the answer I've got from our officers. But
thank you very much for unmuting me.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, I did my research on this. According to me, Moscow Moor north of Bamford and Hathersage is owned by the Duke of Rutland. It's used for grouse shooting. And by my reckoning, I might be wrong, I admit, a chunk of this vast 6,000-acre grouse shooting moor falls in the Derbyshire Dales. I don't really understand Mr. Purdy's reluctance to put this motion to the council, because it was only 2 years ago that the Chancellor of the State stopped shooting grouse on their own lands. You know, and they could easily start again. After all, they do it. And passing a motion that would restrain the way they do that strikes me as a very good initiative towards carbon emissions reduction. Mr. Purdy, what would you say?
Thank you very much.
As I said, Mr. Green, we were happy to join with the Peak Park on this. I think we need a joined up initiative on this, so it does need further investigation. I take your point about you stating the ownership, so I need to go back to our officers and have that double checked, if I may. And any motion that comes to council, we would need to make sure that, you know, we can get it passed. So that would be looked into, I promise.
Why do you need to refer to the Peak Park? Do they have the jurisdiction to do this, or is it the district council?
I need to double check your statement that you think it is our land, so I need to verify that with our officers.
Well, I'm pretty sure it is, and even if it wasn't, as I said, only 2 years ago, the Chatsworth Estate, it was only 2 years ago, the Chatsworth Estate stopped grouse shooting on their moorland.
Well, I'm
So
not.
what's to stop them starting again, and what's the damage in passing the motion, Mr. Purdy?
I can't just bring a motion without facts. I need to investigate the facts, double check who owns the land. I'm not disbelieving you, but I need to get facts, please. And then I promise we'll look into this further. I'll liaise again with our officers.
On that one,
Okay.
Yes, indeed. As I said,
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, so have we got any other questions there? Okay, thank you very much. I've got no further questions that I can see. Thank you very much for everybody's contributions tonight. Thank you, councillors, officers, and ladies and gentlemen, for your attendance today. I hope you found the meeting useful. If you have any comments about the format or content of this meeting, then please let us know using the contact information in the post-event email that you'll all be getting, and that will be sent to the email address you used to register your interest. Just to say that all the presentations are online on our website, and they're all there for reference in future reference. Okay, thank you very much all for attending. I hope to see you all again at future forum meetings. A very good night to you all. Thank you.